Oh boy. I'm really feeling it today, you guys. I gotta light some Palo Santo or something. And I needed to get on here because I feel like this is a really important conversation that we are going to have, and I hope that you will hear me, and I hope that you will give me some feedback. And I hope you will share this video, and I hope that we can have a serious conversation right now about the dark night of the soul that humanity is having right now. And I'm going to do my best to explore both sides. I'm going to try not to be biased, even though my human self is a little bit freaking out that there are children going to school all day wearing masks all day. Yep, I'm going to say it. I'm a little bit freaking out as a mother, as a human, as a woman, and as a conscious person, as a promoter of life and an educator about life force energy management. And our breath is key to our life. The wind echoes me. The breath brings in oxygen, which revitalizes the blood, and on that is life force energy, prana. Okay? Prana is the chi. It is that which brings us life. And it comes in through our nose and mouth. Yes, we do get some prana, little bits coming in through our skin. And we can visualize and imagine prana moving through all of us, and eventually, as matured individuals, yes, we are prana. And so I guess this is where this conversation takes two branches, right? And one is, I want to take the positive side of things first and look at how, yes, we are evolving as a species. Yes, we are on a journey of spiritual maturation where we are becoming more multidimensional, and we are learning how to breathe through all of our senses. And you know, they say that if you close up one sense, like if someone goes blind, their other senses start to heighten, right? So, smell is the sense that's being covered up, right? But taste, it's different because people are still taking masks down to eat. So the sense of smell is mitigated, and instead there's a recirculation here. So we might have other senses that are amplified. But let's seriously consider the consequences of covering up your pranic gateways. And especially in our youngest people who are not still fully developed in their lung capacity. They're still growing. The children are still growing. So they're requiring life force energy to allow them to grow. The oxygen's feeding their blood, the blood is feeding their cells, the cells make up their organs, their glands, their bones, their tissue, their brain, their ability to cognize reality. So as I began this video, humanity is in a very dark night right now. And if we look at the benefits of the dark night of a soul in any human journey, which is called the hero's journey, and we follow in all of our movies this storyline of the hero's journey where there is a journey happening, right? And for each of us, it's the awakening of our soul and our spirit to who we truly are. And in the world, we walk along and we're kind of blind to this. We're just kind of going along with the programming. And then something happens to us to wake us up. And in the process of first the awakening, may feel like a pinnacle moment or an aha or a wide eyes, the challenger cards come next. If you're pulling tarot, if you're looking at this archetypal unfolding, is a dark night of the soul means the soul suddenly falls into darkness, into disarray, into the blackness of the unknown. And there's a benefit of this because at pushing a soul to this place, at some point it's finally going to snap. The person's going to break out somehow and overcome that dark night and liberate self. That's the journey of the soul. However, not every person chooses to have that ripping off of the mask moment that takes the giant breath of prana again and returns one to their conscious journey. The other pathway, and I just have to say it because it's true, the other side of that journey is the suppression of the life force energy so much that the body systems begin to break down. And that's the way the soul exits this dark night, is through some sort of dis-ease paradigm and possibly leaving their body, possibly having a death transition. Now I know this sounds really serious and some of you are like, hey, you're relating mask wearing to dying. And I am, because breath represents life. So therefore no breath represents the opposite of that, the polarity of that, which is death. So, maybe there's not any harm in a few minutes here and there, shopping at the store if that's what you feel like you need to do. And that's the requirement and there's no other options. But this thing about sending our youngest people to a full day of school, and I know I've heard some of the teachers are telling them, oh, they can take their masks away and take a breath. In my mind, as an educator of life force energy, that is 100% not enough. We already, as a human species, breathe very shallow as it is. The normal person breathes off only the top 20% of their lungs and never even takes a full, deep, what we would call a yogic breath, which is using the lower chambers, the middle chambers, and the thoracic and the clavicular upper portions of the lungs, in which you have all of these hair follicles, right, that are taking in the oxygen, that are filtering out, that are like bend through the lungs, sending this life force, this life, this source of our life, this information that rides on the oxygen, that is coming through the sun, through the plants, and translating light codes, data for our conscious evolution into the breath we breathe, into the life force energy, and we are filtering that through our lungs and into our bloodstream and into our cells and our brain. So what do you think happens when this process is inhibited? I'll tell you. Besides not getting the full prana and oxygen required to continue development, there will be a retardation in development and a stifling and holding back of one's consciousness. And I honestly think this is the intent, to hold back the evolution of the species. And my throat kind of tightens up to say that because that feels like a choking situation. And that's why I have to keep reminding myself and pulling this story back to the dark night of the soul of humanity, that I have to, and I ask you to drop in with me right now. And first of all, trust the process of awakening of the God self. But at the same time, understanding that awakening can take many forms. And sometimes it's a very difficult journey. Life force can be suppressed very, very much before pushing the soul out the other side to know God, to know light, to know consciousness and awakening. So even though there's always an overcoming, it's not always in this body. So I think we've pretty much hit a life-death moment in humanity. We're at the death portal. And we're sending our youngest children into it. That's what I'm seeing. We are sending our children into it. For why? Number one, the lessons that are being taught in the schools now have been infiltrated. Okay, let's face it. They are being heavily slanted away from your highest good. Breaking up the core family and any shred of decency and morality in favor of a very, very liberal agenda. And I'm all for it being open-minded. But when it takes us away from our humanness and our ability to come in touch with who we are and to connect with our core people, and instead ignites violent tendencies, as we're seeing now in the college students and the young people that are rioting, not because of something they personally feel, no, how could they? They're young. But because of the unrest that's been incited by the education that they've been getting in this country. And so not only are we distorting the education, but now we are distorting the life force energy, which is really disconnecting one from the ability to judge and have an open mind. And it's very like, if you don't have breath, you're going to just really only take in things at a very surface level. Because that's all you can breathe for. That's all you can really reach. And I know this is some harsh talk. I absolutely do. And so I know this is triggering some of you, and I'm sorry, but sometimes we have to do that. And that is out of love that I'm doing this, because I find this to be a very important subject to breach that a lot of us are afraid to talk about. We don't want to offend each other. We want to somehow get back to some normalcy, and yet we must admit that is not the case here. Just because you can go to the store and you can go to school doesn't mean things have returned to normal. Absolutely not. In fact, quite the contrary. When going into the store now comes with a load of anxiety, and sending our children to school now comes with a load of swallowing that some psychological damage and probably some physical damage is the price we're willing to pay to have them continue to go back to school, which seems normal, which seems like we're going back to the norm. It is just the perception, though, because we're not going back. We're moving forward, and the only way to move forward is to acknowledge that the old structures that we had are not working for us anymore. And they're actually very destructive. And now they've become even more blatantly destructive. So how much of this are we willing to take? How much? So I'm asking you, as a fellow human, if you're watching, probably a fellow parent, to really sit down and consider and ponder these words. And I know some of your kids just want to go back to school, want to be out there, but I think the kids are also trusting that the grown-ups are not doing anything that are going to hurt them. They trust us. They trust the bigger people. And let's face it, the older people are really messing things up right now. Really aren't coming from integrity, really are not all about the vested interest of everyone's health, or we would be promoting healthy eating, deep breaths, sunshine, exercise, emotional health, mental support, we would not just be sanitizing and masking. I'm also where the schools are heavily sanitized and sprayed with chemicals. This is affecting your children. This is not a healthy thing. Germs are important to keep the microdome of your house, of your home, your body, the biosphere of your biology in balance and in check. We must have these things, these invaders, these germs to trigger natural immune response. So it's very concerning that we are seeding an entire new generation with this sort of life force suppression and psychological damage, which masking does do. Whether you would like to admit it or not, walking around like this all day is not good for your mind. So, I know it's easy for some of us to go, it's fine. It's fine, again, if you're doing it for just a short time, perhaps, even though I can immediately notice the effects if I put something like that over my face. I can immediately notice the change in my brain and my psychology and my vision and my reflection of self, confidence, ability to express. Whoever knew we would get to a time when a smile given and received would be the greatest act of courage. I speak this on behalf of the children, on behalf of our youngest, most vulnerable, innocent minds and hearts who have not yet grown into the adults they will be. And I implore you, my fellow parents, to think carefully and consider the consequences of allowing your children to spend the day masked. And sit deeply with it. If everyone does not accept and comply, then this cannot continue. It is only through acceptance and compliance that this is able to continue. So this is a reminder that collectively we are more powerful than we have given ourselves credit for, and that we are really the one who chooses. It is not those in authority figures that choose. They are servants to the people. Governors, mayors, teachers, we pay them. Our tax dollars pay them. They work for us, okay? The government works for the people. The people decide, not the government, not the education board. No. Unless we're like, oh, fine, whatever you say, then we have handed over our power. And once the power is handed over, it's very difficult to get it back without an uprising. So here we are on day 2, 3, 4 of school. Is this something that you would like to see continue this school year and beyond? Because you are giving your permission right now. Let's choose wisely.